In this episode, we'll be building a combine harvester in our new farm area, working on a railway line more, and decorating our tunnels through mountains. So yes, we have made our way over to our new farm area. I have this nice large plains area which I want to build all the different kinds of farm things that I need. I think I'll be mostly focusing on obviously Minecraft crops and crops from Farmer's Delight. And as you can see with Farmer's Delight, there are plenty of different options for different meals and foods and stuff. And I'd like to farm some of these crops just so we can pretty much make whatever kinds of foods that we like. And of course, we're going to do that with Create. I'm going to build a combine harvester using some of Create's mechanical harvesters and make it kind of fancy and pretty, and also use some mechanical arms to place some food into cooking pots so that we can use the Farmer's Delight stoves and whatnot to actually make the meals that we want. We also have a village over here, which is just a typical vanilla one with its weird quirks of the grass being in the wrong places. However, I plan to kind of overtake this village and rebuild it anew with my own building designs. That kind of makes sense to be near a farm. And I think I would like to build some shops and maybe some restaurants as well to actually take in the produce from our farms and actually make them into the meals that we want. And then take those meals from those villages, put them back on the train line over here, and send them all the way back to our home base for us to actually consume, and potentially also make another village over here as well. Because although I am playing by myself, I like the idea of making little villages that kind of act like real life ones, really. And my other plans are, of course, to fix up these tunnels so they're a little bit less plain and boring with stone. I also need to start doubling up this track. I think I'll keep the tunnel through to the farm area to a single track, as there's not going to be too many trains moving through there. Have maybe a bit of an overhang over here, so I'm going to have a second track moving through. So I do eventually want to have a track coming off the left here and go all the way up to the north for our sand mine that I do eventually want to do. And so we're going to have multiple trains coming through here, so we don't want them getting all stuck with each other. And I also think I'm going to keep this track that goes past the river and this mountain to a single track as well, at least until this point where it widens up again, because I don't want to ruin the aesthetic of that area, and make sure that trains only use this track one at a time. And as for the main station itself, I would like to flatten out the ground around here and bring the railway around and back down to the line over here to connect it up into a nice proper loop, as well as have a kind of goods yard in between the two tracks for all our freight trains and stuff to come through. Okay, so I think what I'm actually going to do is grab some more of our track over here and figure out exactly how big I want this train loop to be so that I can figure out how much of big of an area I need to flatten. So it will essentially be something along these lines. I've made a massive curve coming out of the train station and then brought the track down to meet up with the other one. And in order to speed things up a little bit, I think I'm going to create a temporary train over here, where I'm essentially just going to use deployers and just build an absolute ton of them. And I was able to make 64 of them, and trust me, it did cost a lot of bronze. And essentially what I'm going to do is add a bunch of chests on this, as well as some controls and a seat, and grab our glue and just start sticking absolutely everything together. And then I'm just going to throw in a bunch of grass blocks and dirt blocks into these chests. Luckily we have quite a bit of it, but I don't know if it's actually going to be enough for what we need. Okay, I've managed to get out all the dirt that we have in my current storage, which I'm not sure it's going to be enough. But before this, I think I do actually need to move these deployers down, because I think this might be one block too high at the moment. Okay, there we go. That should all be glued again. And I don't think I need to add filters to these. I think they should just pull directly from the chest. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. But I guess let's assemble this and give it a shot. Okay, wow, that actually placed that down pretty quickly. I think I went a little bit too quick with my machine. We did trap some cows and stuff around here, and the sheep as well. But we definitely need a lot more dirt. That's become pretty apparent. So let me go do that. After collecting quite a bit of dirt, including from our new farm area, I managed to finally complete flattening the area in between the rail loop and the train station. I did, however, still run out of dirt for the last final bit, but we can collect some more and finish off the landscaping as we go. I also need to get some tuff so that my big old drill here can place it down underneath the tracks as we go along. So after a bit of caving and making use of our world map, I was able to see that we have some tough caves under this mountain. So I grabbed my mining machine and started drilling at all the tuff, which ended up being a lot more sparse in these caves than I thought they were. And then I was attacked by a bunch of silverfish, which I guess is just a thing in this biome. And once I felt like I grabbed enough tuff, I started doubling up the tracks in the places I wanted them. And then after placing in the tuff into the pavers on my board drill train, I set off once again to start placing the tuff underneath the track and dig out the areas around the second track. Including expanding my first tunnel. There we go, we've gotten all our tuff in, and I started to put tuff underneath the second rail as well, but unfortunately I did kind of run out of tuff well before I could finish the second track. But we're definitely on our way for this railway to look much nicer. I'll have to clear up some things like this and figure out any kinds of bridges over water like over here, as well as sort out some of these floaty parts over here, maybe give it a retaining wall or something of the sorts. But I think for now, I do want to get some kind of tunnel design going for both this tunnel and my now much larger tunnel. And I think I'm going to start a little bit on the inside just so we have it fully encased. And I think I'm actually going to strip away at the wall and replace the blocks there rather than building on top of the walls, just to make sure this tunnel is big enough for the trains coming through. And I'm using this chipped variant called Massive Deep Slate Bricks, which kind of makes it like one huge block that takes up 2 blocks. And I'm just going to pretty much essentially do this design all the way around the sides of the tunnel. So then we're going to have that around the entire outside, but I don't want it to look too bland, so I'm going to add some spruce logs, including some ones actually embedded into the wall itself, including on the ceiling as well, I think. And I've added in some glowstone lanterns as well, just to make sure this tunnel stays nice and bright. Though I do think I want to add some trap doors around, just to add a little bit more texture. And I honestly do like the idea of still being able to have like a path along the sides here, so you don't have to walk onto the track. So we could throw up some girders along here, then use some of these iron bridges that I have made to kind of act as like a bit of a catwalk along the side, and I can repeat that on the side as well. And I think that's like the kind of general gist that I want from this. There's still plenty of space for trains to pass through, but we can also move along down the side of the tunnel as well. Now, obviously, I have just made one section of this tunnel, and I would actually like to use a mod that I've installed that allows me to do pattern schematics. And I believe the way this works is that if I grab my schematic and quill, to make sure that we include everything that I have built, and if we save this as, let's say, tunnel design, and then if I grab an empty pattern schematic, which is simply made with some pink dye, iron sheets, and paper, I can then upload this to the pattern schematic and place it down here, which as you can see is kind of the same as this, but continued. But then if we switch these settings, we could then go to clone. And I believe if I hold Control and scroll, and then if we clone this all the way down to near the other end of the tunnel, probably round about that far, and sorry that it looks a little bit wonky, but I believe we can then throw this into our cannon over here. We'll grab a clipboard and throw it in, and it should give us all the materials that we need to make this entire tunnel, which is actually quite a lot. Now, luckily we can ignore like the coal ore, the copper ore, and the stone, because that's just going to be where the edges of the tunnel are. We are going to have to get quite a lot of materials, more than I actually originally envisioned. But lucky for you, you don't have to watch that, so I'll be back in a bit. A bit of time later, and I have done a bunch more mining for deep slate, and I'm very glad that I actually have an iron farm, because all these metal girders and iron bridges were definitely on the expensive side. And of course, I needed so much deep slate, but luckily I already had a decent amount of it. I just had to go and get a little bit more with my mining machine. Okay, then let me just double check that we've got everything that we need with the checklist. We don't need any of the coal ore, copper ore, stone or train tracks, but we have everything else. So let's get to building, shall we? There we go, there is the main part of our tunnel done. I do need to fix some of these issues with these bridges so that we can walk all the way down. And now actually that these lanterns are placed, I can probably remove these torches as well, because there should be enough light in here now. Yeah, the only thing I have to do left now is cap off these tunnels on both sides. I was also thinking about using the cannon to do the other tunnel that we have as well. But honestly, considering how long this one took, I think we might have to leave that for in between episodes. And I've still got to get more tough as well. I think I'm definitely going to have to potentially make some new factories to kind of streamline this process a little bit. It would be nice to make some tough and other materials that are a little bit harder to get a hold of without me having to go mining for them. Okay, so it's actually been a minute since I made that last clip, and I've come to a realization that I felt like when the cannon was placing in this tunnel that it seemed like surprisingly slow. And I also felt like the materials that I needed were also surprisingly high. And it appears that I might have made a mistake with the pattern schematic. I think I accidentally moved the pattern over twice. So I think I just might have 3 tunnels next to each other now, all hidden away underneath the mountains. In fact, let's dig through this wall real quick and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But oh well, I guess if I ever decide to double up the tunnel down here, I can just open up the tunnel to the left-hand side here, I guess. Although I'm gonna have to dig it up, but I don't know. That's a very funny mistake, and I feel a little bit silly, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, now for this farm area, I did flatten some of the land previously when I was grabbing some dirt for around the train station, but we definitely need to flatten this area more, cover up some of the holes, and just generally prepare it ready for our wheat fields and stuff. Now I would bring in my new little train that I made to place a bunch of dirt, but I think this track is a little bit too far away from the rest, and I don't fancy placing down temporary tracks, so I think I'm just going to grab some dirt and manually fill in these holes. And there we go, that's enough clearing for now. I don't want to flatten the area too much, because even though farm fields are pretty flat, the area around them usually isn't. But the other thing I need to do is that if we are going to have this combine harvester, I am going to need to place some track down, and this will be underneath the ground, but just as a test to begin with, I need to place some track down on top to kind of figure out exactly where the track and the field should be, pretty much just by using the smallest curve that I can. Now I do wish we had the Steam and Rails add-on because they have smaller tracks that can do tighter curves, but it is not currently out for 1.21.1 yet, so we'll just have to make do. But I think I want this field to be pretty long because we are going to have a few different crops on here, and the combine harvester is going to have to be wide enough to also make sure it grabs all the crops in between, because this is 13 blocks long, so I think we're going to need it to at least be 7 or 8 wide in each direction. And you know, I think I was going to originally make this a kind of long rectangle, but maybe we can make this field design a little bit more interesting and have it kind of like an L shape. Though I think the only problem with that idea is I'm not sure if the plants in the center here would get harvested properly, but it doesn't need to be a perfect solution, just enough that it looks kind of cool. Okay, so I think the harvester is going to be about this wide to make sure that it grabs all the crops. So we're going to need to make sure there's enough space on the sides, because I do want some roads, or at least dirt roads, running alongside the farms. Also, I have no idea why there is ice here. We are in the Highlands, but seems like an odd place for them to be. Okay, so I've got a fence in where the edge of the farmland's going to be and where the harvester is pretty much going to reach the edge of. And now I just need to come up with some design for the roads. And yeah, I think something along those lines works quite well. Use a mix of sanded and trodden dirt and some coarse dirt and a little bit of dirty gravel, along with obviously of course a bunch of grass and trees. So I'll bring you back when I'm done with all the dirt roads. And there we go, I've gotten a nice little dirt road around the main part of the farm that I wanted. I will continue to probably route the road around once I start building other parts of this farm area. Now, one thing I'd also like in this farm area is a farmhouse for, you know, the figurative farmer that's going to live here. And I'm thinking of using diorite again, but actually, you know what? The build's already here. But yes, I kind of figured that maybe it was a good idea to just quickly build this off screen, just so we have a nice little farmhouse to go with the rest of our farm. Now, there is no internals at the moment, as I kind of need to decide what I actually want to do with this building. Perhaps use it as a way of accessing all our storage in this area, or maybe just for decorative reasons. Of course, we'll be adding other buildings soon as well to go along with it. But I think our next main priority is to actually make our combine harvester. I'm going to need to have to put this track underground now, just so we can actually hook it up to the track, and then get some ideas going with the actual combine harvester itself. And there we go, that is the track all done underground, and I've made sure to mostly clear out the area so that it can move through freely. Now, I am going to need a train station and some train casings to make a new train, and I also think I need to grab a bunch of copycat blocks, or at least all the different copycat variants, because I'm probably going to try and put as much detail into this as I can, at least a reasonable amount. So what I'm going to do is grab my backpack over here and head back to home base to make a bunch of copycat blocks and also some green concrete, because I'm probably going to try and base this off a real life combine harvester, or at least what I can recreate in Minecraft, of course. So if we grab a bunch of zinc over here, and I already do have some copycat stuff, but I'm going to get a kind of general collection of some of these different kind of types, just to kind of see what we can use to kind of experiment with. Grab some copycat bites, probably some copycat ladders, and definitely some slopes. Probably of both kinds, just in case we decide to experiment with some more interesting shapes. Okay, that's probably a good mixture of things that I would need. And now I need to make myself some concrete. Now, luckily, I do have some cacti. Honestly, I probably should actually plant some of these, as I kind of forgot to do that when I grabbed them many episodes ago. A little temporary spot over here, and I'm going to convert the rest of these into dye using our crushing wheels. We got 23 out of that, so hopefully that should be enough. Some gravel in here that I can mix with our sand to make our green concrete powder. And then I can just kind of throw these into the washer just to get them to be converted into proper concrete. So I made some red and yellow concrete powder as well, just in case you want to use some other colors in our combine harvester. Now if we head back to our farm area just as the sun sets, we can make a start on this design. So first things first, we actually need to place a train station down, and I'll just leave the actual block over here for it. And if we create a new train and throw on a train casing, we can have this ready for the harvester to attach to. And the best thing to do here actually is get some glass panes that stick up high enough so that we can attach anything that the combine harvester is part of to the actual train itself without it being super obvious that it's underground. Okay, so the first thing I obviously need are some of these mechanical harvesters. So I made some of this reinforced green concrete. We do need these to go out by quite a bit, and then we can obviously attach our mechanical harvesters to the front of that. So hoping I'm actually placing this harvester correctly. I might have to adjust where the middle of it is, but We can move things around, it's fine. And I know usually combine harvesters kind of have like little bits that stick out on the edges of them. Probably not a full-size block's worth, but copycat blocks are obviously got their restrictions as well. I'm thinking maybe those two sticking out, and then using these layers kind of get something more interesting. Yeah, that's like a gradual slope, and then I can repeat that on the other side as well. And that's the kind of front part kind of done, although I think we can use some of these panels and these iron bars to go across the back of them. Although, of course, we're going to need to have some kind of attachment point. So perhaps just use our normal slopes with some weathered iron, because those can attach to the cab. Of course, we're going to also use some green concrete for. This is where the experimentation for the different kinds of shapes that I want is going to have to start happening. It's kind of nice that with some of these copycats, they blend really well together with the chipped blocks. I know these slope bits are kind of a little bit wonky, but they're not bad enough for me to not use. It would have been really nice if we did have steam and rails, because then I could have used their special metals that they have, but alas, just like the tracks, we don't quite have them just yet. This front bit's definitely gonna be where our cab is, so I think throwing up some more panels here, and then use some of this leaded glass to act as the window for the cab. And of course, going to need a little bit of a roof for this cab. Perhaps using some of these deep slate slabs with some steps so that it sticks out a little bit, but not too much. Kind of the same thing up here as well, actually, so that we have a little bit of layering with the cab. Then I think what I might do is use these shafts on the sides here, along with a metal bracket facing in this direction. And those kind of look like little wing mirrors. I actually kind of love that. And actually we can make use of our red and yellow panels here so that these can kind of act a bit like lights on the front of it. And of course, to access the cab, we are going to need some ladders, probably on both sides, just for the sake of symmetry. And I think just behind the ladder, we're probably going to have our big old wheels. And luckily, our deep slate has a stairs variant, so we don't need to use copycats for that. And I think for the middle of the wheel, we can just throw in a little yellow valve and do that on the other side as well. Then of course we just need to give it a little bit of depth to this combine harvester. I think I'm actually going to use some more of this reinforced green concrete. Some of these half panels kind of act like our little yellow stripe going across. Now this side I think is going to be a little bit different from the other side, because combine harvesters tend to have like a little bit of like almost like kind of piping coming out to empty the grains out of it into usually like a truck of some sort. And I think using these copycat fluid pipes kind of makes it look like one of those. Of course, they usually come out at an angle, but this will do for now. I think around the back here, we're going to continue our green concrete design. And we also need like a second smaller wheel back here as well. And I think just simply using some stairs a little bit further underneath kind of works. Although it's looking a little bit floaty there at the moment, so let's get some green concrete to go behind it. So it looks like it's actually attached to something. And then I need to more or less repeat this design on the other side, minus the pipe sticking out. It's something like that. I still wanted to add a little bit of fluid pipe in because it felt a little bit too flat without it. I just don't extend it all the way back. Now on the top of combine harvesters, they usually have some kind of mechanism that takes the hay and kind of like turns it around a bunch. I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea really what it actually does. Unsurprisingly, I am not a farmer, but that's essentially what this is going to pretend to be. I'm not gonna put anything else in here, but that's kind of what it looks like from a distance. And of course, around the back, we should probably still have some more red lights. And I think that's pretty much what I want from this combine harvester. It's not super ultra detailed, but I think it works with what kind of design I was thinking of. And in fact, let's break through the ceiling here so we can actually get access to the inside. I'm gonna need to probably grab a mob at some point and bring them here to control the combine harvester. I'm gonna need some train controls here, but I'm gonna have to use another copycat panel at the front here just to cover up that gap. And then I'm probably gonna have to place some storage back here. I might just use normal chests. I don't think I need to worry about what I'm putting in here, just enough so that once it goes around the field, it should be able to pick up most things. Okay, I've added a portable storage interface, got our train controls in, a seat, and of course our chest to hold onto our produce. And I'm going to have to figure out how to offload this system. Obviously, this is pretty far away from the edge of a field, so I may have to build something into the field a little bit, or maybe just have like a conveyor belt going over, but I'll figure out something. Now, the next thing I need to do is glue it all together. And luckily this shouldn't be too difficult to do. I just need to make sure I actually get everything within my selection. To make sure I can connect these ladders, I am having to put in something behind it so it classes it as being connected, and then I can just remove it afterwards. Okay, I think I've gotten everything, and now I just need to make sure that this is connected to underneath. And that looks like it's all connected up. So now if I assemble the train, hopefully this should work. Then we're going to get in and I'm going to figure out if this works. And it looks like it does. And I didn't miss out anything as well. It's going a little bit fast, obviously. Very fast, in fact. I'll have to make sure there is a speed restriction on this as it moves around. But it is indeed working. I'm actually very excited by this. If only we could also get the wheels to turn as well. And actually, I've just come to a realization as well. It looks like these harvesters no longer take up grass, it seems. Because when I passed this area, it didn't seem to actually destroy any of the grass. So, okay, that's good to know, because I deliberately left the grass off of the road that crosses the farm, because I kind of figured that they would get destroyed. But no, it looks like I can re-add them back just fine. Also, this chicken is getting pushed around a little bit. Okay, so now I guess the next thing I need to do is fill up this field with all the different crops that I need. Probably going to have to get a bunch of bone meal and just spam some of the crops so I can actually have enough to plant them all. But luckily we obviously have our mob farm and we can use that to get all the bones and therefore all the bone meal as well. And there we go. There is a bunch of our plants planted. Also, we have a nice big wheat field over here. Got some onions, some cabbage, some carrots. I've got some flax here, which is actually from supplementaries, and that's going to be useful for other things. Potatoes, tomatoes, and beetroots. And I have left a little bit of space down here just in case I've forgotten about a crop for some reason, or if maybe I decide to add other mods that add more seeds. And you may have also noticed that there is no currently any pumpkins or melons, and that's mostly because the way they are farmed is a little bit different, so I'll have to create a separate crop farm for those. But I'm really liking how this is looking, especially the wheat field part with the combine harvester in. Unfortunately, that's all we actually have time for this week. I did want to get the combine harvester set up so that we can export from it. Unfortunately, this week I've had a few setbacks, both in real life and in the game. But hopefully we can catch up on some of those things next week, along with some other farm-related stuff as well. But anyway, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye for now.